We're back. It's a good time of year, though, to talk about gaming, isn't it? Because a lot of people are opening up consoles at this time of year. PlayStation 5 Pros or PlayStation Portals, Xboxes and Switches and stuff like that. So it's a very exciting time of year. On the way, we're going to hear about a world record in video game development. A game that took 22 years to make has finally been released.
And we've got video games without the video. We'll be checking out an audio-only game.
And we'll find out what 2025 has in store for gamers.
In 2002, a group of Italian gamers, they got together to chase a dream. Sounds like the start of a film, doesn't it?
Or an epic video game in itself.
Exactly. Now, they wanted to release a video game for the cutting-edge technology of the time, the Game Boy Advance. Do you remember them?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. I thought I'd just have a sip of tea there. No, I did. Yes, I do. I remember the Game Boy Advance. I had one and I played a lot of Castlevania.
Now, this lot, they had no experience at all, but they had a hell of a lot of enthusiasm. It didn't last long, though, and one by one, the group kind of fell apart. Now, 22 years later, Chris, the only remaining original member, Fabio Belsanti, has finally managed to get his game called Kian published. Now, it holds the record for the most delayed release in video game history. So, what took so long? Chris has been speaking to Fabio.
We were the first Italian company to develop for Game Boy Advance, but we were really crazy people. No one of the founders was a programmer. That's a fun thing. But with a lot of will, we go on. And after 2 years, we reached the final game. But the problem was that the game could not be published for market reasons.
How did the game eventually get released?
The game was in our archive from 2008, 2009. We tried here and there to see if we can port it to mobile, to the phones, but each time it was not possible because we had to make other projects to survive, because we are a very indie company, so we have always the hell on our heel. So, but after so many years, the retro gaming market become a reality, and so from there, new opportunities arise to publish Kian. Kian could see the light after so many years.
So, how easy is it for someone like me to play Kian? Do I have to go and dig out my Game Boy Advance from the attic?
Yes, you must have the Game Boy Advance to play it, or you can emulate it on the PC. It's a piece of archaeology, so it's an object, an artifact. You have to relate with it, not like any other game, but like a piece of history.
Dare I ask, are there plans for a Kian 2? I know it's just been released in that sense, because it may take another 20-something years to come out.
I don't know. Now that I'm not very young, I hope. Kian 2 depends what will happen with this release. We started to build a demo that is named Astral Equilibrium, and we hope to finish and release it in less years, because now we have this record, and it's okay to have just one record in this field, no more than this.
Fabio Belsanti there, and Kian is out now for Game Boy Advance, if you still have one that works, or you can play it on an emulator, and it's spelled Kian. Have you still got a Game Boy Advance?
Remind me though which one this is, because we've got.
So it's not the huge brick one.
No.
The Game Boy Advance was the one that was
it's kind of a side one, isn't
a rectangle
it?
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've got one of them. It's pink and see-through.
I'll be borrowing that if that's okay.
For sure. Now, did you know, Chris, there's a whole genre of games that are 100% audio, so no video at all. Now, one we thought we'd check out is called The Veil Shadow of the Crown. And Chris, you actually caught up with Dave Evans from Falling Squirrel, who designed the game.
When I first thought of the idea of doing this, I actually, for about a week, thought this might be a completely original idea, as many people assume, because they're not exposed to many games like this. Audiogames.net has a whole catalog of games they've been tracking, probably up to over 1,000 games, but mostly really small games made by hobbyists, simple driving games or shooting games, that sort of thing. And but my original idea was to do something quite big in a medium I thought I could afford to do it, essentially. So I'd worked in AAA, I'd work on bigger projects, and I just really wanted to do something that could focus in on things that I felt I could do well, which was narrative and working with actors. So that's really why I did the game.
And the narrative is such an important part of the game. And just give us a bit of a flavour of that as well, because I think from the title, people might be able to guess that we're kind of in a fantasy world, or at least we've got kind of medieval characters and things like that. So give us a flavour of the game itself.
Yeah, it's a low fantasy medieval setting. It's a choice mostly based on me wanting to start in a familiar place for doing something very different from what I've done. And I also thought it was great for the soundscape, having a lot of noisy sounds that might mean something in combat that were up close. So medieval fighting being very much around melee combat and not shooting guns from far away. I thought that made a lot of sense for what I wanted to do with combat. You play as a blind character, a princess who's been sort of exiled by her father out into the barrens to lord over a castle, and then an invading army swoops in and pushes her out of that place, and she has to make her way back home with the help of people she meets along the way.
Why would it be my father's dying wish to send me to the Borderlands?
You, Alex, are officially home.
My lord.
What is it?
Odedan riders from the northwest.
Wait here, Alex.
Uncle? Uncle!
And I want to say very clearly, you don't have to be blind to play and seriously enjoy this game. It's really fun.
In fact, the game very initially was me wanting to do an audio game without really thinking about accessibility. Very quickly, accessibility became something that was obvious to what the game was going to be, and being all audio. And I started partnering up with people that could help me make a game who were familiar with games like this. And most importantly, were part of the blind community and could help me make a game that would satisfy some of the things that they would want to see, because I thought this would be just it made a lot of sense that people within this community might be interested in this game. But in the end, it kind of went back to where I started, where I think I made a game that is as much for sighted players as it is for blind players. And I kind of made a game with the blind community for the sighted community on a certain level.
Just tell me a bit about the combat, because that's something that struck me the most. Is yes, you've got the story, but then you've actually created a system of combat.
The combat is based around a sort of a slot system where enemies will move into places around you, where someone's either in front of you, to the left or the right. And then most of the combat is about you listening to what they're doing, what kind of enemy they are, what they might have, and then reacting or appropriately swinging out at them and kind of initiating attacks. So it's a combination, I guess, of timing your response to their attack, like blocking, and then timing your counterattacks. As the game moves on, there's some nuances to that in terms of enemies that have combos that you can kind of listen to, when to interrupt their attacks. On the higher level settings, you really have to pay attention to this, and it's something that's a little bit evocative of like a Mike Tyson's Punch-Out sort of scenario, where there's a little bit of pattern recognition, and then because of my own sensibilities and wanting to make things feel kind of raw, I also made it a little more organic, and there's quite a bit of unexpected aspects to multiple enemies attacking you, so you wouldn't feel the same sort of pattern twice. You'd recognize the things you need to know from where enemies are and what you have to do, but you don't ever have to truly memorize something so it becomes automated, which is what I wanted to avoid.
How interesting is that? That's so cool.
When you take out one of the usual senses when you're playing a game. So if you take out vision and the video element, it makes you engage with it in a very different way. And also it works great for radio.
Yeah, for sure. So that was Dave Evans from Falling Squirrel, and The Veil Shadow of the Crown is out now on Xbox and PC. Now, did you know that the BBC's China correspondent is also a gamer? Did you know that?
It's nice to have a kind of a sideline project.
Yeah, I mean, when you say the BBC's China correspondent, you don't necessarily think they have time to probably game, do you?
And yet,
Kerry Allen does. She actually sent us this review of Crime Scene Cleaner, which sounds right up my street, which she's been enjoying a bit too much this year.
So, a few months back, a friend of mine introduced me to the simulation game House Flipper. And I was amazed how relaxing it was playing a simulation game where you literally just do mundane household chores like vacuum carpets, clean windows and throw away rubbish in order to spruce up homes. So I blamed her when I got a Steam recommendation this week for the newly released Crime Scene Cleaner, which seemed to take the concept even further. If you like simulation games, tidying and like going that extra mile to get 100% completion points, then this is probably the game for you, because your role is to clean up messy crime scenes before the police get there, to get a mop and bucket out and clean blood-spattered walls and put furniture back where it was, and obviously dispose of the odd dead body or two. Of course, if you don't like blood and guts, then I have to say now this isn't the game for you. But there I was, finding myself watching the trailer on release date, and seeing the gameplay look quite similar to House Flipper, I thought, I'm going to have to give this a try. And I have to say that one thing I found surprisingly good about the game is that it seems to have a really good story to it. With some simulation games, you get a little bit of a story, but I'd say that very much takes the back seat to the actual gameplay. With this, though, it feels like you really get to know the character you're playing as. It's first person, and you're a man looking to make some money for his unwell daughter, and you do a favour for one of your dubious mates and realise you've probably bit off more than you can chew. At the end of the first clean-up, you get to go back to your apartment, clean up, wander around and ask yourself, what on earth have you just done? And then the next morning your phone starts ringing and it seems your dubious friend has set you up for even more clean-up missions that are also episodic chapters. Now I have to say, I could not stop playing this when I gave it a try. I mean, you don't feel you can leave until you've left the place spotless. And there's a dark sense of humour to it that I have to say mean videos on this are going to be a fun watch on Twitch. But I'd say try it now before the hype, as you'll be wanting to figure out how to clean up the crime yourself without having others spoil it for you. And then by all means, go and laugh at people on Twitch trying to figure out how to get a dead body down a fire escape.
Kerry Allen there, taking time out from being the BBC's China correspondent to play Crime Scene Cleaner.
She is Superwoman.
Now, neuroscientists at Stanford University have spent their time identifying a Pokemon region of the brain.
How big is this in your brain?
Well, actually, the Pokemon region is probably the biggest bit.
I bet.
This team recruited 11 Pokemon masters, people who describe themselves as Pokemon enthusiasts.
Wow, what? Can you actually become that in real life?
You can. Yeah, you actually can. Wow. There's also, they sort of pitted them against 11 Pokemon newbies, so people who just started playing the game. And they monitored this part of the brain called the occipitotemporal sulcus.
Well done.
That brain region activated more strongly in gamer brains when presented with Pokemon pictures than people who hadn't really played Pokemon before.
So your occipitotemporal sulcus must be massive. It must be huge.
Well, we're going to find out what it all means. This is Jesse Gomez, who's one of the neuroscientists who led this research.
You know, it turns out that as humans, we're very social creatures, and so we're very good at things like recognizing each other's faces. And in childhood, we learn how to read, and we get very good at reading. It turns out that these skills that we, perfect in our childhood actually have a lasting impact on our brain. And in our visual cortex, especially, we develop these regions in the temporal lobe, kind of just behind our ears, that help us recognize things like faces and words. What's interesting to us, though, as neuroscientists, is that these brain regions always kind of pop up in the same brain folds across people. And so that's still kind of an interesting mystery to us. And, the most definitive way to go about figuring out why they're organized the way they are and to kind of differentiate the theories is to, have people become an expert with a new visual stimulus that's kind of different from faces and words and see if you get a new brain region. So it turns out Pokemon were excellent because they were something that kids learned in childhood. It was like this natural experiment that happened in the 90s that I realized would have been like, it's going to be like a perfect experiment. So that's why we ended up using Pokemon.
And people just happen to be
learning this because they were really keen to learn about Pokemon, and it just so happens that that's useful for your research, which is quite amusing to me, because people really wanted to learn all of, 150, 151, two of the original Pokemon, you know.
Yeah, and the game was perfect because it was very motivated. Even the TV show, if you remember it,
yeah, of course.
You know, kind of motivated you for recognizing them. They would have like black silhouettes and be like, who's that Pokemon? And so it was kind of this crazy like environment that just really motivated people for like knowing all these intricate differences between these hundreds of visually similar things. And what was super useful is that Nintendo just kept cranking out these games, and the Pokemon company just kept, you know, cranking these games out. And so now there's almost 1,000, I think, by the end of this year. And so it's, it's incredible.
It's interesting that, because obviously it shapes part of the brain, this learning experience, the desire to learn all the Pokemon. Is there some evidence? Because, you know, parents will always say, my parents used to say to me as a kid, if you watch too much TV, if you play too many computer games, your eyes will go square, it will melt your brain, stuff like this. Is there any evidence that actually this is a bad thing, that your brain is being shaped by a game, by a cartoon series?
I think parents' worry was that if they're watching TV or playing video games, then like they're not learning math, they're not doing homework. And I think that's probably where a lot of that fear comes from. And I know there was a craze, especially in the 90s, like there's violence in video games and it's like affecting people. And, you know, I don't think there's ever been a definitive study to show that there was anything negative about this. You know, if anything, I think it's very interesting because it suggests that, at least in visual cortex where we were studying, you know, it's capable of representing more visual stimuli than we thought, because previously people have observed, you know, special regions for like words, faces, numbers, bodies, and places, like things that are important for us to recognize. And so the fact that you can get an additional one suggests that the brain's, you know, capable of more than we thought, and we're probably just limited by, you know, how much time you have to experience stuff in childhood.
Gotcha. Okay. And are you a Pokemon fan yourself? I mean, or is it just something that happened to be perfect for what you were looking at?
Yeah. No, I was a huge Pokemon fan. I think that's what helped kind of motivate the thought of why it would work. Because the original experiment that motivated it was done in monkeys, and they kind of taught monkeys new like Helvetica characters and Tetris figures and showed that they get new brain regions. And I was like, oh, this would be really cool to do in humans, but, you know, like trapping kids in a lab for what could potentially be hundreds of hours to teach them a new experiment just wasn't feasible. And so for a few days I was kind of bummed. And then, you know, I still play Pokemon because they come out, you know, they still come out with games, and I watched the movie and everything. And it was just, it just dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, this, you know, like the 90s already did this experiment. This is perfect.
That was Jessie Gomez.
I think your Hippocalamus is definitely bigger than mine. Do you think you could, how many of the 150?
Well,
150
nowadays
Pokemon.
I think there's way more than that.
Yeah, but
when we started Pokemon, there was 150. Well, there's 151 because they added in Mew and Mewtwo and stuff. I don't know. I'm not very good at it. I was playing the trading card game on my phone, which they've released recently.
Yeah.
And I opened up these packs of cards in Digital Land, and I was like, I don't remember any of these Pokemon. It's fading away. Let's look back at 2024 and what a great year for gaming it was. These are our top 5 releases.
In at number 5, it is...
I've been spending too much time on this. Dragon Age, the Veilguard, which is a recent release, not quite as groundbreaking as the first few games of the series, but fans like me have been waiting too long for this one.
And in at number 4, a game I personally loved, Astrobot. Fun for all the family, and what started out as a tech demo for the new PlayStation controller has become a proper franchise.
This is an unusual inclusion, Hades 2, which was released in early access, and there's more and more updates for it. It's some of the best Greek god hack and slasher action that I've played since Hades 1, which won all those prizes. It's well worth checking out.
In at number 2 is Helldivers 2. Now, Chris, you must have played this one for hours.
It's really, you just made co-op gaming online fun again. It's really good. Also, if you like Starship Troopers, which I do, I'm a big fan of, taking out the bugs is fun.
And in at number 1, drum roll please.
I love a drum roll.
It's Chris's favourite game of the year. What is it, Chris?
Well, this is Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2, so it's a bit of a mouthful. But I used to actually like the little models, but this game is spectacular, and there's so many updates coming for it. It's just so much fun, and a TV show's coming soon with Henry Cavill.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
kind of need to mention as well Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. No?
Yeah. I mean,
come on.
I didn't love it, but loads of people loved it. So I feel like let's just mention it.
We'll just mention it.
Walk away slowly. Last year we sat down to play a game together, which is, in the spirit of this time of year. Yeah, I think we've carved out about 10 minutes before our 1-year-old was.
I was going to say,
so
we
demanding.
don't have time anymore, do we?
It's snatched moments between childcare. We played Super Mario Brothers Wonder last year. We thought we'd play another Mario game. Does that sound good?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, this is Mario and Luigi Brothership. I thought this game was co-op, but it's very much not a co-op game, even though it says it's Brothership, and you'd think it might be 2-player. But it's going to be a Lee playing the game experience, and I'm going to annoy you.
Here we go. Oh, you can't skip the cutscene.
No, you can't skip it. Luigi's being attacked by bees. We haven't even started the game yet. Oh, you've managed to skip the cutscene? Okay,
yeah, well done. Right, here we go. New game. Okay, so first impressions. Graphics aren't amazing.
So you're running around as Mario on a beach, and it looks a little bit like the classic Mario 64 games. So you've triggered some kind of Final Fantasy, Pokemon turn-based style combat.
Yep, here we go. It says jump attacks. Choose an enemy to attack with jump. Press the button as you stomp on the enemy to make the attack count. So I've got to basically stomp on these onion-looking things. This reminds me of Pokemon, doesn't it?
Wow, you're quite good at this, actually.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't... Mind you, this is your style of game, so...
Right, I've just jumped on... Ooh! You attack, they attack. So this is really different to the other Marios, isn't it? Because I don't think you've ever kind of done like a Pokemon-esque sort of battle like that.
I'm just intrigued as to when Luigi's going to turn up, though, because there's not a lot of brothership going on at the moment.
Oh, he's having flashbacks of his brother.
What happened to his brother?
We don't know what happened to his brother because I skipped the cutscene.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, is there some deep hidden storyline here?
He's getting a bit sad now. Look.
Oh no!
We're in another Pokemon-esque sort of
so
battle.
This is going to be annoying. Every time you run into an onion thing, you have to battle them. Sometimes you just want to get from A to B without stopping 30 times. But we're kind of in that situation here. What I also get annoyed about in these games is they don't bother to do proper script or voice acting or any lines. So so far you've just heard lots of beeping sounds. And Mario, Luigi. Listen, this is all they bother to voice. Luigi! He's talking like a Pokemon, because Pokemon just say their own names, don't they?
So we think Luigi's on a ship and Mario's going to jump on the ship. Here we go.
Get him.
Luigi's caught him. Yay!
They love each other, really. Like all brothers in real life.
The end.
That's the end of the game. So just so you know, you then go on to play with Mario and Luigi, and you sort of help each other do these puzzles that you've been experiencing here. I think we get the point. It's maybe not for you and me, but I think kids, if they were, in this day and age, if you enjoyed Pokemon when you were sort of 8, 9 and 10, this might be quite a good game for them.
How much is it?
40 quid. So the thing is, given how many other Mario games we have played in the past, this year's offering and the latest one from Nintendo, I don't know if it warrants... I
don't think it's the best one.
It should read just as like a mini game as part of Mario Jamboree rather than it's a standard. I don't know if it warrants a standalone title in itself.
No, I think basically if you like Pokemon and you like Mario, then maybe give this a try, but don't be looking for anything special.
Well, just before the clock ticks away, a quick mention of the games that we're looking forward to the most for 2025. I know which one yours is going to be because it's the same as what it was last year.
Just seen in the script.
Because it wasn't released in 2024 and it should have been.
I know. Where is Little Nightmares 3?
Yeah, it was a bit delayed, wasn't it?
This is my favourite, dare I say, all-time game. I don't know, Crash Bandicoot.
The series is one of your favourites.
Honestly, if you love horror and you like nice graphics and everything to look beautiful, not a lot of cutscenes either.
You hate a cutscene, don't you?
Hate a cutscene. This is the one. And number 3 has online co-op too, which is amazing.
Well, let's see if it does come out in 2025. One of the ones that I'm looking forward to the most is the possible release of Grand Theft Auto 6, which technically could be coming out in the fourth quarter of 2025, which means it won't be. There's also a game from the guy who made the BioShock series, the first games in that series, called Judas. So that one looks pretty exciting, and it should be coming out in 2025.
Cool. Well, we've had lots of fun. Thank you so much for having us. Have a great 2025 in gaming, and we'll see you next year.